Welcome to Disco Kitchen Paris. I'm glad that you're here. This is our very first live show. So I don't know what I'm going to say or how it's going to go, but I'm going to do my best to entertain everybody and hopefully give you a recipe that you like and entertain you just a little bit. Just to start, I want to tell you Disco Kitchen Paris was an idea that we came up with a couple of years ago, several years ago. It's taken us a while to get things kicked off, but the idea came, to be clear, there are three disco balls hanging here, and Disco Kitchen Paris doesn't exist. I should say the disco balls don't exist because of Disco Kitchen Paris, but Disco Kitchen Paris exists because of the disco balls. So in my last apartment, in fact, since I've moved to France, there have been disco balls hanging in my kitchen. And the reason that I decided to hang them is because they just are balls of joy. Like you can't go wrong. First of all, every time you have a party, that's where everybody sort of convenes. And so having disco balls in the kitchen is awesome. Before this is over, I'll turn them on so you can see what I'm talking about. But also, they represent joy, and it makes me happy. And very often, this part I won't show on here, but very often when I'm here, even by myself and cooking, I have the disco lights on and plenty of music going and just dance around the kitchen, and that is pure joy. So that's what Disco Kitchen is about. It is about finding your joy. And if your joy is not disco balls, then it's not disco balls. But hopefully what you get out of this is the joy of cooking and sharing with people. And we'll talk a little bit tonight, I'm not sure. But generally with Disco Kitchen Paris, we talk a little bit about language and culture, living in France, of course, and food, a lot about food, and also how that brings us together and teaches us to share and understand what is our differences, but also what brings us together. So that's the concept behind today. Behind Disco Kitchen Paris, and we're going to get started with tonight's dish, which is Greek meatballs with tzatziki sauce. This dish is perfect for parties. We'll talk a little bit more about the meatballs and how to save them. It's great and flexible so that you can freeze them and make them later. It's a great thing to have for Super Bowl parties if you're doing that in the next week. And super easy to make. There's nothing very difficult about it. So if you subscribe, I'm sorry if you were on here a few minutes ago because you already heard me say this, but if you subscribe to today's list, you already got the the shopping list, and so you knew what we'd be preparing tonight, and you knew what things to prepare in advance. If you don't subscribe, you can go to todayslist.com and click on the subscribe button, subscribe to our email list, and you'll get those updates so that when we have future Disco Kitchen Paris live shows, you'll know exactly what to do in advance and you can cook along. Additionally, you will get a list of things that I've already prepared in advance. So if I've already chopped the onions before I get started, then you'll know which things to have ready so that you don't fall behind in the recipe and we can just move forward. So, for example, in the email that I sent, I told everybody to have 1.5 cups of breadcrumbs and 1/2 cup of milk. I have already added the milk to the breadcrumbs, so they're quite, let's get if I can get up here, they're quite moist now and separated. I'm trying to spill it everywhere. And the idea is to stir the milk into the breadcrumb slowly so that you end up with crumb and not glue. Because this is going to get mixed into the meat, and we don't want to have big clumps of bread inside our meatballs. So this is in fact, this almost is the consistency of couscous after it's cooked. There's a few big pieces in here, but mostly it's separated and the breadcrumbs are moist. So we're going to put that aside, and the next thing that we will do to get started is chop up the rest of our onions and garlic, get them softened so we can get them in the pan and add them to the mix. Now, the onion and garlic, we're going to sweat or soften it, saute it on a low heat so that it doesn't, so it's not crunchy inside our meatballs. I'm going to cut that off, get rid of that part. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here. We're going to cut, it needs to be finely diced, so we're going to cut horizontally across the onion. I made a couple of cuts because we want them to be fine. And then I'm going to cut into many slices across the top. I just want to say too, like not long ago, somebody said to me, how do you cut onions without crying? And I would tell you, if if you cry when you cut onions, not always, but generally, if you cry when you cut onions, the culprit is your knife. And that is usually because your knife is not sharp enough. So what's happening when you cut onions is, or what makes you cry, is that there are gases inside the onions, and those gases they affect your eyes, right? So when your knife is dull, instead of you cutting cleanly through the onion, you're actually pressing on the onion and releasing more of those gases. So the best way to avoid crying when you cut onions is to have a really sharp knife. Also, a really sharp knife is, even though it seems a little counterintuitive, a really sharp knife is actually safer than a dull knife. So that is the way, generally, that I make sure that I don't cry. And if I do, I just run out of the room or get a good cry in, whatever works for you. These pieces that I'm saving, by the way, we'll talk about this in another video. But these pieces that I cut off, the end of the onion, those I always save, and every other scrap that I can think of, they go in the freezer, and then in a big sack. And I'm sure that we'll show this in another video, but all vegetable scraps generally go into a giant sack in the freezer, and then I use them to make chicken stock later. So don't throw anything away. Even the skins, those go in there too. Skins, the stem, whatever it is, it goes in there. After it's been washed, of course. All right, so we've got our onion. This is 1 medium onion. And next we will add the garlic. The directions for this recipe call for garlic either finely chopped or grated. I've lost my towel. We're going to grate it, mostly because that's easier for what we're trying to do. And you can grate it right into the onion. It is 2 cloves of garlic. That might seem like a lot right now, but it's going to be 2 pounds of meat, so it's really not that much. And again, whatever's left goes here to be placed into my stock sack later. I don't know if stock sack is a word, but right now it should be. That's your new term, stock sack. All right, so I want to get this started right away now that we've got the breadcrumbs ready, because this needs to go into the saute pan to start softening. And it takes a few minutes because you're going to be doing it on low heat for the saute pan to do its trick. Hold on just a second. Sorry, this is our very first live show, and so I wasn't clever enough to set up that face tracking situation. That'll have to be another time. So I can get this out of the way now, and we'll move the pan over here so you can see what's happening. I'm doing this in a nonstick pan. Mostly the onion and garlic wouldn't have to go in a nonstick pan, but I'm doing it in a nonstick pan because that's what I'll be cooking the meatballs in later, and that probably is the best way to do it. So we're just going to start with, and I'm going to remain with the same pan after we take the onions and garlic out. You want this to be, as soon as I figure out how to work this thing, you want it to be on fairly low heat. So I would tell you medium low. You need a solid amount of olive oil, probably a tablespoon and a half. Let that start to heat up a little bit, and then we'll put our onions and garlic in there and get them started. I hope you can see what's going on here. Okay, next. Generally, I would not make meatballs in a salad bowl, but I wanted to make sure that you could see what was going on. So let me get this. I'll be able to move some things around. So I wanted you to be able to see what was going on, so we're putting it in this glass bowl, but that's not necessary. As soon as our oil gets heated up, we'll get the onions and garlic going. You do not want the onions and garlic to be on very high heat because we don't want the onions to brown. And also the garlic will brown much more quickly. So just a low enough heat to get them soft. It'll probably take about 5 to 7 minutes, which is fine. We've got other things to do while that happens. And then we'll add it to our final mixture. Okay, so while that's getting ready, it's almost done. It's almost ready to go. In my meat tray, that's another new word for you. In my meat tray, I have a combination of lamb and beef. So if you got our newsletter, you saw you can use either lamb or beef or a combination of the two. I will tell you honestly, I have also used pork in this recipe and veal. All of them work fine. You can choose one or the other, or a combination of the two. But this is 2 pounds, or for my friends here in France, 900 grams. So I'm going to add the meat to the bowl, and then I think we're ready to add our onions and garlic to the pan. You definitely should not be hearing sizzle at this point. It should be low enough that it's not sizzling. You're just trying to keep them through and get them to soften and the onions to become a little translucent and not crunchy when somebody bites into your meat. All right. To sort of aid the process, we're going to add just a little bit of salt over the tops, and this will start to draw out some of the moisture and help sweat the onions. So now you just want them in a nice thin layer. If you can see that or not, here's how that looks, so that they can start doing their thing. And they will start softening while we continue to make our meatballs. Okay, so we've got the meat in there. The next thing that goes in is 1.5 cups of breadcrumbs, 1/2 cup of milk. The 1/2 cup of milk has been poured over slowly to get you this sort of crumbly texture, and I let it sit for about 10 minutes before we started, so that it's ready to go into. All right, next we have in this our spices in this bowl: 2 teaspoons of cumin, 2 teaspoons of dried oregano. Sprinkle that over. Very good. Then we have 2 teaspoons of salt. This is sea salt, but you can use regular salt. It's coarse salt. 1/2 teaspoon of ground black pepper and 1/2 teaspoon of red chili flakes. Now, I would say for 2 pounds of meat, 1/2 teaspoon of red pepper flakes is not very much. If you want it more spicy, add a little bit more. If not, you can dial it back. What's really strange is that the red pepper flakes, number one, in France are kind of hard to find. 2, hot and spicy food is not really a French thing. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult sometimes to find things that you think are spicy, particularly if you're American and you're used to being able to get spicy food. I'll tell you, when I first moved to Paris, I brought a bottle of Louisiana hot sauce with me, and it didn't last long. And after a couple of months, I was thinking to myself, where am I going to find hot sauce? I was searching everywhere. It's not a thing here. So there are some supermarkets that sell Tabasco, and I'm not trying to crap on Tabasco. I'm just telling you, it's not the same. So I had to search for hot sauce, and fortunately, over time, I did find a couple of stores that sold reasonable hot sauce, but it's really not a thing here. It's just not part of the cuisine unless you go to a place when you're visiting France that is more ethnic, like Asian places or Mexican places, etc. You'll find hot sauce, but it's really not part of their palate. Okay, so we've added the spices, we added the breadcrumbs. The next thing would be the herbs. So I have a 1/4 cup of chopped fresh parsley. We're going to put those in there, and the mint gets a little funny, so I'm going to chop the mint fresh. Let's move this out of the way, and we'll chop up some mint. While I'm getting the mint ready, if you were on here, by the way, the mint is also 1/4 cup. While I'm getting the mint ready, if you didn't hear this at the beginning, this is our first live. We hope that we'll do more, and I hope that you'll be here. If you like this, please let us know if there's something else that you want to see. We haven't really launched into the disco part of this yet, but if you want to see more of this kind of content, let us know. And if you want to see more long-form video, so I've posted plenty of stuff, short-form video on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. But if you want to see more long-form video, there are several other YouTube videos that are long-form recipes, travel guides, DIY projects, etc. on YouTube, and that is on YouTube at Today's Nest, all one word. So you can follow us there and subscribe, and then you'll see other videos there that are other recipes that we've done. That's ragged. Mint down! All right. Just about there. Onions are starting to soften. So there are mint in these meatballs, and I will say generally, if you are watching us from the U.S. and you're making meatballs, or you make meatballs, mint is not really an American meatball kind of thing. This dish is decidedly Mediterranean. I am American, but for those of you who know me, you already know this. But for those of you who don't, I am also an Arab, so I am quite used to Mediterranean flavors. And also, we're making this with tzatziki sauce. So this is This is correct. Now, if you're following along tonight, you don't have the recipe, and you don't yet follow us on todaysnest.com, and you aren't a subscriber, this recipe is not on the site, but this recipe is available in our Top Us book, which is for sale on the site. This recipe is not on the site, but there is a recipe for kefta or kafta or kofta. It depends on where you're from. That is very similar, but Mediterranean meatballs almost always have meat. So we got a quarter cup of mint. I've already added the parsley. We would just add the mint to our bowl. It might be a little more than a quarter cup. Don't tell anybody. And clean that off in case you need it. Choke, cutting board here, and then go. In fact, let me put the cutting board here so you might be able to see better. And we'll stir up these onions. They're getting really close now. Starting to get a little translucent. We're almost there. All right. So next, by the way, I just threw those mint stems away, and I told you earlier that I save everything from my stock sack. The garlic and onion stem bits are there. Mint's not really good in chicken stock for me, so I don't save those stems, but the parsley stems I absolutely saved, and they went in the stock sack earlier, and I will use those to make chicken stock later. So mint for chicken stock, not my favorite. All right, the next thing, we don't need this fork in here anymore. The next thing will be 2 eggs, lightly beaten in advance. You can add them all at once if you want to, but I like to just make sure that it's all mixed together first. So we'll just put that over, and then we will be almost ready to start mixing everything. Somebody's going to have to do all these dishes, that's for sure. Okay, we got garlic, sweat the onions, we did the breadcrumbs, we did the egg, we did the herbs and spices. I think we're there. All right, so now you can see the onions have become much softer, a little bit lighter, very fragrant. Wish y'all could smell what's going on in here. That might be one of my favorite smells in the universe. Onions and garlic, and I will tell you that onions and garlic they are the beginning of, I don't want to tell you 100%, but they're the beginning of about 80% of every meal that happens in my place. It is a smell that is like no other, and it is, I don't know, comforting and warm, and just reminds you of childhood and your mom cooking. So I'm going to put the onions and garlic into the same bowl. Get it all. And then we'll just turn this off for a few minutes. I'll set this aside so you can see my digits. This is the point where some people will tell you to put on gloves. I have some. I'm going to put on the gloves to mix it. I'm not going to put on the gloves to roll, because the rolling is something I want you to be able to see, and that's the gloves might get in the way. So, also I have hairy hands. Not sure if that matters to anybody, but I'm not sure anybody wants any hair coming off my hands into their meatballs. All right, you got everything in the bowl that needs to be in there. Let me just be sure. Lamb, egg. Yes, we're good. Okay, now we're going to start mixing it together. Here's the key to this. You want to mix it, but you don't want to get nuts. So we want it to still be meat, but not overworked, right? So and that's part of the reason that we were talking about the breadcrumbs earlier, making sure that you poured the milk slowly into the breadcrumbs while you stirred them, so you don't end up with a big brick of bread, but instead something that looks a little more like cooked couscous, so that it's soft and it distributes evenly among the meat. And also we want to make sure that the egg gets distributed evenly so that it binds everything together when we're finished. Now, we have mint in here and oregano. There are many recipes in the world that will tell you Mediterranean meatballs also need lemon. And I would say if you're going to do it, put lemon zest. I wouldn't deal with the lemon juice. The problem that you may run into is that the lemon juice might make your mix too moist, and then when you fry them, they'll just fall apart. So that is enough mixing. It is just enough to make sure that the ingredients are incorporated and that you've got egg and bread spread throughout, and that the herbs get everywhere. All right, I'm going to ditch the gloves, and the next thing we're going to do is roll them. So this is, pardon me, this is 2 pounds of meat, as I said, and you can, sorry, let me get to the right thing. You can use a small cookie scoop, I believe it's number 30, or a measuring cup. And you can weigh them on a scale if you want to, but I generally go for 2 tablespoons of meat. So this is a 1/8 cup or a coffee scoop, or in fact, 2 tablespoons. If you use 2 tablespoons with this recipe, you will end up with, officially, I'm going to tell you 45 meatballs, but in fact, it's more like 47 or 48. So the last 3 you can just eat for yourself when you're finished. I almost always use it not only because I want to make sure that I have the right number of meatballs, but also because I want to make sure that they are of consistent shape. So just scoop it in there, flatten it out, and scoop it in and kind of press it down so you know that you're getting the right amount. And then that is 2 ounces. So I'm just going to do for now, if you can get up here so you can see what's going on. I've just scooped it in there. I'm going to press it down, scrape off the rest with my hand. This is what I've got now. Poke my thumb in there, get out the rest of it, squeeze it together a little bit, put it on the tray. I'm going to do 12 right now so that we can move forward, because you don't want to watch me make 45 meatballs, I'm sure. And then we will move on to the next step. While I'm doing this, I also want to mention, if you haven't already, if you're interested in France, if you're interested in Paris, be sure to check out a couple of things. So we have another profile that is called Love Notes Paris. And on Love Notes Paris, I will talk quite a lot about, obviously, Paris, things that I love, things that I miss about the US sometimes. There will be tips for restaurants. There will be tours of the arrondissement that are here in Paris, and general good vibes. Also, if you are somebody who does not live in France, but you have been thinking about living in France, we have a new cohort that is starting that is called French Life Blueprint and the Move Lab. So the French Life Blueprint is a guide that we created to help people make their move from wherever they are outside of France to France. And the cohort exists to help people be in a group that gets them. This is for people who are really serious about moving. They've made the decision and they just don't want to screw it all up, or spend a bunch of money they don't need to spend, or waste their time. And so you can go on there also and join the group and have the support that you need, not just during your move, but also after you get moved. Unfortunately, it doesn't end once you get here. There's plenty of stuff to do once you arrive. And so this will help you also move forward with your plan. All right, we're almost there. This is number 11. If you're wondering what this music is, the answer is I don't know. Well, in short, the answer is I don't know. The problem is that I can't really play for you what I would usually play in my disco kitchen because of copyrights. So what you're listening to is a lot of royalty-free music, which is fine. That's just not what I usually would have on here. All right, gonna rinse my hand off, and then we're gonna get started. All right, how are we so far? Everything going all right? I'm sorry, I'm scrambling to see your comments because my eyes aren't that great, so I'm looking at what's going on, but I hope you're enjoying yourselves. And if you like this, I hope that you will let us know that you want this or what you don't like about it so that we can do it differently, so we can create some more. All right. This part's going to seem a little nutty to some people. The next thing that we're going to do is no, that's not the next thing. The next thing we're going to do is roll the meatballs. And then we're going to coat them in flour. I probably need a different pan. So I'm going to get close enough to the camera so you can see what's going on here. The rolling, I mean, it's not so technical, but there's a little technique. There's a little skill to it. So I've got my meatball. I'm going to put it between my palms. And at first, I'm going to kind of press a little bit. And you'll see when I'm going to start rolling, because what I'm really trying to do right now is just compress the meat together, make sure that everything stays bound. And as I do it, I'm going to make my hands more and more concave so that in the end, I end up with an actual ball. So what happens sometimes is if you don't make your hands concave enough, you will end up, let me see if I can show you, something that looks like a flying saucer. So the idea here is roll it, get it plenty flat, and then start to make both of your hands more concave, so that in the end, when the ball is rolling around, you end up with a sphere. All right, the spheres I'm going to place on this tray, and you just have to bear with me because I'm going to roll 12 spheres. We start small, and then we make our hands concave, so we end up with a sphere. I can already smell the mint, and okay, that one's a little funky. Let's try again. That happens sometimes. Sometimes the meat and the herbs and the meat sort of separate everything, and so you just want to make sure that you're getting real balls. I can smell the mint as I rub them. I can smell the mint and the onion inside here. All right, nice. Now, of course, meatballs aren't only Mediterranean. These are, but meatballs are in almost every culture in one form or another. There are some that make them with a lot of different kinds of ingredients that don't taste like these. And there's some straight up American ones. What is that? I can't remember now, but there's something that people make that I believe has grape jelly in it. I think it's like meatballs tossed in a crock pot with grape jelly and mustard or something. I've never had them, but I've heard people talk about them. I don't want to say it's bad because I don't know. I haven't had it. But the sound of it isn't that great. But maybe it's really wonderful. So when we're finished with these in a few minutes, we're going to get them started in the pan, and we're going to make some tzatziki sauce. Tzatziki sauce is wonderful for all kinds of things, but I want to tell you that in the tapas book, these meatballs are served just with yogurt, which is with Greek yogurt, which is also good. They are fine with just yogurt on its own, but tzatziki sauce adds a little something extra. Very easy to make, and honestly, tzatziki sauce is so good, even like just, on its own, but you can just add it to so many things or dip vegetables in it. It is, the tzatziki sauce alone was worth your ticket money. Like it is a dish worth knowing how to make. It is super easy. We've got an herb problem. I don't want to miss any onions. Cheap and easy, little to, no fat if you use non-fat Greek yogurt. And a great accompaniment to so many things. All right, I have to rinse my hands again, and then we will move up to the next step. All right, the next step might be controversial for some people, and it is not required, but I do like to do it. And the reason, what it is we're going to dust all of the meatballs in flour. So some people don't do it, and I will tell you there have been other times that I haven't done it, and I've made American style meatballs without doing it. I like to dust them in flour because it helps add a little crispiness to the outsides of them, particularly when you're frying them. And I should say, we didn't talk about this in the beginning, but there are many meatball recipes that I have made through the years that are strictly made in the oven. So they get browned in a pan, and then they go into the oven to finish. This one can be made entirely in a pan. I decided to do it this way so that you would have something easy enough to make and also easy enough for me to explain in one video without you having to wait for 20 minutes for me to put them in the oven. But adding a bit of flour on the outside helps them get a little crispy on the outside while they cook on the inside. So I have here a bowl of flour. Sorry, I'm laughing because this bowl, don't tell anyone, this bowl is actually from a microwave meal, and I have a stupid amount of these, which is kind of embarrassing to admit, but there is one particular microwave meal here that I get when I don't feel like cooking, and it's very easy. And so these bowls I decided quite some time ago to keep if I decided to buy that meal, because they are microwavable and they're great for just adding ingredients inside, and then I can stack them up and work with it. Anyway, this is the bowl. And this bowl has about a half a cup of flour in there, but you probably won't need that much. Depends on how many meatballs you're going to roll. Before we start to put the flour on them, I want to tell you that this is the point. So this recipe makes 45 meatballs, 48, 3 are for you, 45 meatballs at 2 tablespoons, or 1/8 of a cup each, right? If you are not going to make the meatballs today, and you want to freeze them, now's your chance. So we've rolled them all up. If that is what you intend to do, put them on a parchment-lined baking sheet, put them in the freezer. I was going to say oven, that's wrong. Put them in the freezer, let them get frozen for about 2 hours, and then you can take them off the parchment, stick them into a sack, and you'll be ready to go when you're ready, right? Then all you need to do is take them out, let them thaw a bit. You can coat them in flour then, and then you can move on to frying or baking. But this is the point where you would do that. Otherwise, you have another option, which is make them all right now and fry them, or bake them if that's what you're going to do. And then once they're cooked, you can also put them in the freezer. But I think it's probably, the first option is probably better, and particularly if you're going to do this week, and then for Super Bowl, for example, you want to have 45 meatballs ready, then you can do all the rolling, everything that you need to do, put them in the freezer now, and then on Sunday morning, take them out, let them thaw, maybe Saturday night, let them thaw in the fridge, and then all you have to do is toss them lightly in flour, and you're ready to either fry them or bake them. So, okay, we have our 12 lovely meatballs here. Somewhere in the universe, I have another, no, I don't. And we're just going to drop them in the flour, cover them lightly in the flour. This is actually my favorite part. It's a little bit therapeutic, so let me put this up here so you can see what's going on. And once you just roll it in the flour lightly, and then you just get to toss it back and forth in your hands. When you do this, you'll see why I like it, because you really want very little flour on them. It is just to help crisp them up a little bit, but just for the record, this part's fun. That is letting it roll between your fingers and making sure it's all covered. This is quite a lot of fun. All right. Also, note to self, note to you, your counter is going to be covered in flour, so be ready to deal with that. All right. You don't know it yet, but I've been making meatballs all afternoon, so this is between tossing the meatballs from one hand to the other and the disco balls. It's been a joyous day. All right, we're almost there, and then we're going to get them started in the pan. I probably should have started the oil already, but that would have taken away from what I'm doing with you, and you wouldn't have been able to see what's happening. All right, just 4 more. All right. Who's going to eat all these meatballs? FYI, if you're watching and you are a friend of mine and you live in Paris, count on getting meatballs this week. All right, we're going to get this out of here. Let me just clear off the cutting board. I think you still need it. You don't know it, but I've got a giant trash can as well. I have a giant trash can, but in my house, that's actually called a trash box, just below here. So we'll just get rid of this stuff, and then we'll get these things fired up. All right, I'm going to bring the heat back over. If you can see it. Same pan. We want the heat to be on medium. So we're going to go with that. And you will need, in the bottom of the pan, a solid amount of olive oil. So how much olive oil? I can't say exactly. This will depend on the pan that you're using. This pan looks to be about 12 or 13 inches wide. It's probably going to take 2.5 to 3 tablespoons of oil. You just want to make sure that there's a small layer all the way across the bottom of the pan. And some of the oil is there's still oil in here, not a lot, but still oil in here from the onions and garlic. All right, so we're going to let that do its thing for just a second. In the meantime, we're going to get started on the tzatziki sauce. And tzatziki sauce is it couldn't be easier if you don't know what it is. It is Greek yogurt, cucumber, garlic, and a little extra if you're me. So to get started, we're going to first peel a cucumber. I didn't get the yogurt out. Let me do that. If you got our list in the email because you're a subscriber to Today's Nest, you already know that you needed 16 ounces of yogurt. I'm going to say 450 grams for my European friends. This is non-fat Greek yogurt, or in France, skyr. All right, somewhere around here, there's a peeler. Here we go. So we're just going to get by the way, we're going to peel the cucumber. I'm just going to tell you, cucumber is not something I save the skins from to put in my stock sack. They're kind of bitter, and so I don't generally put them in my chicken stock. But everything else, most other things, yes. Now I've said it about mint and about cucumber peels, but most other things go in the stock sack. You can use other cucumbers for this. You do not have to use an English cucumber. I just happen to like these because they have far fewer seeds. We'll cut it in half, and it's going to get grated. About there, almost there. And then be lowered. We're going to grate the cucumber with a grater directly into the bowl. The truth is that grater is old, and so it is not very effective. Oh, now we're ready. All right. So I'm sorry, you can't see what I'm doing. I am just putting the meatballs in here, the 12 of them, to let them get started in this oil. And then we will finish up our tzatziki sauce. So once they go in there, you want the bottom to actually cook for just a second before you start flipping them around, so that it stays solid. There, just glad that that is not on this table, or I would be shaking you from place. Try not to grate your knuckles in there. Right there, I'm going to give these just a quick turn now. I think they've been getting started and we're okay. Sometimes it's more useful just to roll them around a bit. And then get them back on. All right. Otherwise, while I'm grating this cucumber, which will take me a couple more seconds, tell me what you're making for Super Bowl Sunday. If you've got some plans, or if you're making some sort of special dish that you always make, or if you're not, tell me what you'd like me to make next. So I'll tell you, I love to cook. If you've been following me for a while, you've seen for, I don't know, the last 15 or 16 years that we've been working with lots of brands and our own content on Today's Nest, which is largely about food and travel and culture and language. But I love to cook, but I will, in fairness, tell you that the majority of the things that I make are Italian or Mediterranean or American, for sure. Okay, so we've got our cucumber all grated here. There's a lot of liquid, and you don't want it. Well, you want it, but you don't want it in the dish. So in this bowl, I have bowl, strainer, and a piece of cloth. You can use cheesecloth for this. So we want all of the pulp from the cucumber, but none of the, or as little of the liquid as possible. Put cucumber in there. Just going to give these meatballs another quick stir. The meatballs will, on medium heat, they'll start to firm up in just a few minutes, but they will take about 15 to 20 minutes total to cook all the way through. I highly recommend that you use a instant read thermometer. You want the inside of the interior of the meatballs to be 160 to 165 Fahrenheit or 70 to 75 Celsius. All right, we've got our cucumber inside here. 2 cups of yogurt. We're just going to turn and squeeze, turn and squeeze, turn and squeeze. Get out most of the liquid, not all, but most of the liquid. I will also say too, I didn't really tell you this when I was putting them in the pan. You could have stopped right there after they get browned. After they get browned a little bit, you can stop there if you want and put them on a baking tray and pop them right into the oven, 350 for about 15 to 20 minutes. I would check them after 10 minutes because it depends on how long you've let them saute in the pan. Check the interior, make sure that it gets to 160 to 165, and then you're good to go. All right, here's our cucumber pulp. It's going in the bowl. The reason that I use all of these rags in this way is because I don't care if I end up throwing it away, but this one I actually will wash. And this liquid, safe. So put it in the fridge, add some mint to it, and a little bit of water. It makes a wonderful drink, or use it for a cocktail. You can do all kinds of things with cucumber water. We're going to say cucumber water. Don't need this strainer anymore. Let's turn these meatballs again. All right, so now we have yogurt and cucumber. We'll go back to the strainer because it does work for this. We're going to grate 2 cloves of garlic. Keep the nubs for another time. Some people don't like what I'm about to tell you next, but I'm going to tell you anyway because it's who I am. I think almost everything is improved with olive oil. So this gets a hearty swirl of olive oil. I'm going to guess about a tablespoon. And the last thing it gets, usually just a pinch of kosher salt. Kosher salt or sea salt, but I'm going to use this today. And my friends, that is it. Then this just gets mixed up really well to make sure that we've got the cucumber spread throughout. And I'm telling you, even if you don't make the meatballs, make the meatballs. But even if you don't make the meatballs, make the tzatziki sauce and just have it in your fridge so you can eat it with carrots or spread it on a sandwich. Put it on a sandwich instead of mayonnaise with some ham, cheese. Like it is so good and so fresh. And especially if you're at the beginning of the year and you're trying to drop some lbs, like there's no fat involved. It is full of protein and no fat, and tastes like nothing but freshness. All right, we're just about done with the meatballs. I'm going to let those keep doing their thing. We've got the tzatziki made. I'm going to put these aside. They've got just a few more minutes left. We've got mad amounts of meat sitting around. That's cool. And we have our sauce. I want to make sure that you can see what I'm going to show you next. And that is, so I made some meatballs earlier today. And I want to show you one of my favorite ways to serve this so you have it for Super Bowl party, whatever kind of party you're going to have, if you're serving it as an appetizer. So I have this cork cutting board, but I want to say for the record, you could also use a cork trivet. This one I think came from IKEA for 99 cents or something. So I have the cork cutting board, and on the cork cutting board, I am just going to place a piece of parchment paper. And then I also have these appetizer picks. Appetizer picks. You could use wooden skewers for this also, just short ones. And on each of these appetizer picks, I am going to place 3 meatballs. Oh, let me do that in a different way. There we go. 3 meatballs. That seems like a reasonable serving size for someone. Right through the center and right through the last one. And then this is it. Then, this, because the parchment paper is here, because you don't want it to be greasy, then you can just poke them directly into the cork. So it's like this. So I've got a few of them. And then on this tray, I would just put a bowl of the tzatziki sauce so that you, any guest, can just pick up a skewer, pluck it right out of there, put it on their plate, and dollop a little tzatziki sauce on their plate also and be on their way. So we're just about done here. Let me show you that. That's how that will look when you're done. Uh-oh, ball on the loose. All right, we're just gonna let those do their thing. And I will get this tzatziki sauce ready. Watch yourself. And then we're about done here. So, wow, okay, my first day on the job. Somewhere around here, that's actually what I meant to do. Solid scoop. I'm gonna take one of these skewers and stick it on my plate. I'm gonna take the skewer out so you can see what's going on. Show you one of the meatballs. I don't know if these others are done yet enough for me to show you the interior of them. These have been sitting out a bit, so they're a little bit cold, but they are fantastic. And I'm just going to get a little of this tzatziki sauce. Oh, you know what? I know you didn't wait this long for this, and I probably should have orchestrated this a little bit better. But let me turn on the disco lights so it seems real for you to be in Disco Kitchen Paris. I will tell you that I frequently have the disco lights on, even when I'm here by myself. There is something special about it to me, and it does bring me a kind of joy that I don't have in other ways. There's something about them that just reminds me of my childhood, reminds me of my teenage years and going to the club, and they instantly turn a dull afternoon into something special. So disco lights on. I'm gonna turn up the music a little, maybe, and we'll have meatballs with Greek meatballs with tzatziki sauce. I hope that you make it. I hope that you enjoyed being here. I feel like I'm forgetting to tell you something, but I don't remember what it is. If you're watching this and you don't follow me on Instagram, I hope you will. Consider it. If you are watching this and you do follow me on Instagram, I hope you will also go over to YouTube and subscribe. You'll find lots of new videos there and longer form videos. And if you do follow me and you also follow on YouTube, or maybe not, and you follow Today's Nest and you are not yet subscribed to our email list, please make sure that you subscribe so that you get updates about when we're going to have new recipes and when we're going to do new live cooking shows and all of the other new things that are coming to Today's Nest this year. I wish you all health and wealth, and I hope you have a great new year. As you might know, if you've watched any of our other Disco Kitchen Paris videos, I always finish them in the same way, and that is stay curious, stay hungry, and always lick the bowl. Ciao for now. That's good. That's good. Okay. Woo!